If I could have everyone's attention, please. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the December meeting of the Wilson County Board of Zoning Appeals. We have an agenda that has been prepared and advertised. Do we have anyone at this point who wishes to have your case deferred to another meeting or withdrawn in its entirety? And I will tell you that case 4235, Mueller Transportation has requested withdrawal. So we will not hear that case this morning. Yes, sir. What case?
Sir?
What case did you want to speak to?
Miller Transportation.
Are you here to speak in opposition or in favor? Okay, it is going to be, we're going to defer that, okay? And we're going to defer that till they request to get back on?
Yeah, I've got a requested deferral email for 1 month.
Okay, for 1 month, okay. All right, does anyone else have a case that wishes to be deferred or withdrawn? Okay. Mr. Jennings, do I have to have a vote to defer?
You need to.
Okay. At the request of the applicant, I move that we defer case 4235 Meller to the January meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Who seconded? Okay.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposition vote no, and it is deferred to January. Okay? Just to let everyone know, we do have a court recorder this morning that's taking a record of our proceedings. The court recorder is provided as a service by Wilson County. If you would like a transcript of a particular case this morning, if you would please see the court recorder at the conclusion of our meeting, and they'll make arrangements to get that to you at your expense. A reminder to everyone to please silence your cell phones. When we call each case, I'll call the case, I'll read the case criteria, we'll get staff recommendations, and then we'll give the applicant an opportunity to come to the podium and make any comments they would like to the board. And after the applicants have the opportunity, then we'll also give anyone who wishes to speak in support or in opposition the opportunity to do so. And for the record, the staff has made recommendations to the board, and we will be considering the staff recommendations as we make our decisions. Another reminder to everyone, the meeting is being recorded for the Wilson County Television this morning, so you can rewatch these proceedings later on YouTube Wilson County Television. If you are going to make a statement in front of the board this morning, you need to be sworn in. So at this time, if you do plan to speak, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're going to give to this board to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Each time that we call a case, we'll have, as I mentioned previously, we'll have the opportunity for each one, either the applicant or anyone in opposition or in support, to make comments in regard to the particular case. But the state requires that we have a general comment period prior to any public meeting. So at this time, do we have anyone who wishes to address the board in a general nature during the general public comment period? And if not, the public comment period will be closed. Turning to the board, you have the meeting minutes in front of you from the November meeting. They were sent to you earlier this month. You've had a chance to review those. Are there any corrections that need to be made to the meeting minutes of November? And if not, do I hear a motion we approve November's minutes?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from November. Any discussion? And if not, all in favor of approving the minutes vote aye. Aye. Opposition vote no. And the ayes have it. Okay. Our first First case this morning is a deferral from November, Ascar versus Board of Zoning Appeals, Chancery Court lawsuit regarding case 4164. Mr. Chris, do you have anything else you want to add to this case?
No, sir, I do believe the load test is completed and they've handed those results out to you, and that is to utilize the septic on this property as opposed to hooking to a public sewer per commercial requirements. And that'll be up to you all to decide on that action.
Mr. Jennings, anything else to add?
I don't have anything else to add, Mr. Chairman, other than I think Mr. Charlie Dean is here on behalf of the applicant and their attorney and can answer technical questions about the load test or whatever was done out there. So
All right.
I'll defer to him.
Mr. Dean, do you want to come forward?
Morning, Charlie Dean with Dean Design Group here representing the project. Mr. Gill has had conversations with Mr. Jennings, and I guess just to continue the conversation from last month, we've got the variance for the setbacks in the front for the existing building, and then we've got the variance for the use of septic for commercial use. And we performed the load test. It was the results of the load test were adequate, and I'll be happy to answer any other questions that you have, but we're just here.
Mr. Dean, if you could, for the benefit of the board, would you quickly summarize the variances that were requested and how they were addressed?
There's two variances requested. The first is a front setback variance that the existing foundation of the previous building, the existing building, was already encroaching in the now setback. The structure was built on the foundation of the existing building, and so the current structure, as it sits today, violates the front setback. So we are requesting essentially that the positioning of the building as it stood before be granted the front setback variance. The other issue is the use of
The sewer, the sewer variance.
septic for commercial structure, and of course there's anywhere near here that has access to public sewer, and the existing facility has long been on a septic system, and we have performed the load test to verify that the existing system that had functioned for the property for decades is still adequate. So that's essentially the crux of the two matters.
Well, just refresh my memory. What is the current zoning of the property?
It is C.
I think it's C1.
Some type of commercial zoning?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's-
I thought it was. I just wanted to be sure.
Just as a clarification and just to refresh everyone's memory and for those in attendance today, this particular item is not a normal case here. This is a case that was heard some time ago, and legal proceedings were filed, and now this is coming back to us for a approval of a settlement. So I won't be calling for any additional comments because all that took place way back when the case was originally here. So what's in front of the board is, again, it was here in November and we talked about it, and then we asked them to get this septic information together, which they have. But what's in front of the board is to accept the settlement proposal as proposed to us by our county attorney. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Dean? And these documents that he has presented would become part of the settlement?
They would.
Okay.
And we'll do an order, and we'll reference the fact that of the original decision that was made here, and that the settlement, if approved, was felt to be in the best interest of all concerned.
Okay. Any questions from the board? If not, I will move to approve the settlement with the stipulations that the documents that the applicant has turned in be made part of the record. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion by the board?
Just for clarity, should we mention that it's kind of grandfathered in, or not really? I mean, I know that's covered, but I mean, should that be in there anywhere?
Go ahead and put it in there.
I mean, I don't care. I'm just asking. I don't care.
Okay, so amendment has been offered to add that grandfather clause is in effect, and I'll accept that amendment. Sonia?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's accepted by all parties. So the motion as amended is to approve the settlement with the documents that the applicant has submitted being made part of the approval, and the grandfather clause has been noted as being in effect. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of the settlement and the motion as stated, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposition, vote no. The ayes have it. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for your time.
Okay. Our next case is case 4230, Blake Billings, requesting to use the property as short-term rental. He is also needing a variance from the 2-acre requirement. The property is located at 203 Kings Road, Lot 27. Crown Points Estate is Group A, Parcel 5 on Wilson County Tax Map 32H. We'll get staff recommendations on 4230.
Mr. Chair, the applicant is requesting to use the property as a short-term rental on an R1 zone property of approximately 28,749 square feet. Staff has received a business plan stating how the applicant considers using the property. If the use is granted, staff recommends that the business plan be made part of the approval and put the applicant on notice that if they are to add any sort of structure or expansion to the use of the property, they will have to come back before this board for a plot plan submittal and revised business plan. The home is listed as a 4-bedroom, 2-bath with a limit of 12 guests. Typically, the board will allow 2 guests per bedroom, limiting the number of guests allowed to 8. The business plan states that the caretaker is located within 10 miles of the property. Airbnb short-term rentals are use permissible on appeal in the R1 zone district with a minimum acreage requirement of 2 acres. If the board approves the request, the applicant will have to make their contact information available to WEMA, the building inspector of the county sheriff's office. The applicant will also need to prove that they or the caretaker live within 10 miles of the property before the house can function as short-term rental. And they have submitted that information. The request will also need to be approved with the variance request of 1.34 acres or 58,370 square feet on the lot size requirement for an Airbnb short-term rental in the county. Given the language in the zoning ordinance, staff cannot recommend approval of the short-term rental use due to the property not meeting the 2-acre threshold.
Okay, who's here to represent 4230 Billings? Yes, sir. Name and address, please.
Stephen Billings, I live at 120 Pine Grove Road currently.
Okay. And what would you like to tell the board, sir?
Well, I know the 2-acre thing, and I had actually just bought a little over an acre right behind this property, and I'm building my house here, and I still currently use the shop and everything that is on Kings Road address. I didn't know if that would make, it's 2 separate lots, but if that would,
Do you plan to combine them?
if it's possible, because my shop and most of where I keep all my stuff is on the Kings Road address currently. And then my house is 15 feet from the backyard.
You wouldn't be able to combine them if he's building a home on that other tract. We only allow 1 residence per tract.
I got it, okay. I got you. So the other track is actually where you're building.
Yes.
I got you.
And they just back up to each other.
I got it, okay. And the reason I asked, we've never, to my knowledge, varied from the 2-acre restriction.
Right.
Or maybe we did once in an extreme circumstance.
There's one that I can think of, but that applicant was only renting 1 bedroom and they were still living in the home. It's the only one I can recall.
Out of many, we varied one time for a very special case.
And if we did vary, it would be more apt to be for just 1/10 of an acre or some, a very, very minimum amount. And you're asking for quite a bit. Yeah,
And there's no way to combine them with
right.
being separate tracks.
Well, you could combine it, but if you in doing so created a single track with 2 residences, then that in itself is a violation.
Okay. If the driveways or, so does that matter with the road frontage?
I don't want to spend too much time talking technicalities here, but normally you get one house per tract, normally. And in this case, with the short-term rental, the ordinance requires that you have 2 acres. But anyway, go ahead. Does the board have questions for the applicant? If not, does anyone else here wish to speak to 4230 Billings?
Back in the back, maybe.
Yes, ma'am. Please come forward.
My name is Lauren Breeze, County Commissioner, District 18, 1014 Bellwood Drive. I actually have received complaints about this particular property, about the number of Airbnb guests. So I've already had complaints.
It's
I
already
know-
operating?
Yeah. It was a violation.
Yes.
Okay, excuse me. Go ahead.
Yes, and I actually, I got another phone call earlier this week to let me know that not only were they operating before, but they are currently operating, even though they were given the violation notice. So they're still renting with 12 people, with a septic tank probably for 4 bedrooms, which we've had issues before. You all know this. So,
Yeah, I knew if that was going to be an issue, I didn't really set it all up. I had some help with that, and I knew that would have
Yeah.
been with the septic.
Yeah.
Finding out.
I've had issues in the past with Airbnbs where we've gotten all the way to the point of criminal discharge of sewage, because not only has the septic tank been blown by extra capacity, but the field lines have been blown too. So I think it's very important to make sure that we follow the law for septic as well. So
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else? If not, I'll close the public hearing in regard to 4230 Billings and turn to the board for a motion or any other discussion we need to have.
Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion that we deny this case based on staff recommendations and the fact that it's lacks quite a bit meeting the lot size, minimum lot size requirement.
Have a motion to deny case 4230 based on staff recommendations and lack of lot size. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposition vote no. And the ayes have it. Thank you for coming. Our next case is case 4231, Clay Hare Sr. requesting a renewal of a short-term rental. The board approved the short-term rental on February 16, 2023 for a period of 1 year. The property located at 3924 Cairo Bend Road, Lot 13, Gwanda property is parcel 39.17 on Wilson County Tax Map 26, consisting of 17.3 acres, zoned A1 agricultural. We'll get staff recommendations now on 4231.
Mr. Chair, the applicant is requesting to renew an approval for a short-term rental. Short-term rental was originally granted for 1 year on February 16, 2023, so this one is currently expired, but they're looking to renew it. It was approved with the following conditions. The maximum number of occupants was 6. The business plan was part of this approval, and any changes was made aware to the applicant. If they are to come, they will be required to come back before the board. All contact information must be submitted to the building inspector's office. The business plan staff received upholds those conditions listed above. The use and amenities of their property have not changed, nor have there been any public complaints about the property. Staff can recommend approval of the request. There's no language in the zoning ordinance granting staff's permission to renew short-term rental approvals. However, the board may consider this request. Staff will point out that in renewal cases such as this, if the request is approved, the board typically grants an extended renewal period.
Okay, who's here to represent 4231 Clay Hare Sr.?
I'm Clay Hare Sr.,
And your address, sir?
3924 Cairo Bend Road.
All right. Anything you'd like to tell the board?
No, I'm just here for approval.
I would caution you about letting this approval run out.
Yeah.
Because they are changing from time to time how we approve these things. And as long as it's,
I got 2 years, but then I realized it was 1 year, and then you grant it again for 2 or 3 years. Somebody told me. Thank you.
is this your second or third trip up here?
Second.
This is your, so you got approval and now you're back for the.
Yes, sir, for second approval.
Gotcha, okay. Anything you'd like to tell the board?
No.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? If not, anyone else here wish to address 4231 Clay Hare? Okay, if not, I'll close the public comment period and turn to the board.
I got one question.
Go ahead.
Has there been any complaints in the last year?
He says,
I have not received any, Mr. Blades.
I'll assume there's none.
okay. No, he had mentioned a while ago that he hadn't received any. Okay. Any other questions from?
It's all around me, so I don't have any real neighbors.
Okay, if there are no other questions from the board, and this would be his second renewal. Typically, we do those for 3 years. So in the case of 4231, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve for a renewal of 3 years.
Motion to approve for 3 years, and will you include in that motion that all of the original stipulations in the original approval will be
Yes.
part of this motion?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Crockett. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second by Mr. Blades. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposition vote no. And the ayes have it. Thank you, sir.
So that's approved for 3 years, next 3 years?
3 years.
Thank you so
You should
much.
be back here in Christmas time of 27.
Put that on your calendar.
Thank you.
Our next case is case 4232, William Wesley Peck, requesting a variance of 4 feet from the north and south side yard setback requirements of 15 feet. The variance will allow the proposed ramp to be 11 feet from the north side property line and the existing ramp 11 feet from the south side property line. The property located at 118 Stewart's Landing Drive, Lot 30. Stewart's Landing is Group C, Parcel 11, on Wilson County Tax Map 118A, consisting of approximately 12,750 square feet, and is zoned R2 PUD. We'll get staff recommendations now on case 4232.
Mr. Chair, the applicant is requesting a variance of 4 feet from the north and side yard setback requirements of 15 feet per the master plan. This is not an older tract of record, with the lot being created in June of 2021, and this is an R2 PUD style development where side setbacks for the primary structure were set by the developer at the time of platting and were part of the rezoning. Therefore, given the language in the zoning ordinance and the development criterion for this PUD, staff cannot recommend approval.
Okay, who's here to represent 4232 Peck?
That would be me, William Peck.
And address, sir?
I live on the property, 118 Stewart's Landing.
All right, go ahead.
Let me write my case number here. The reason we were requesting this variance, we were building an extension of our existing deck that came with the home. We bought the home from the builder in March of 2023. So we wanted to extend the deck, and the property is very steeply sloped between the front of the house down to Suggs Creek behind the home. So we have, an older dog, and my wife has back problems. So rather than steps, we wanted to build a ramp down from the deck to the yard. So if we were to build that, if we were to build that fully behind the home, then it would be difficult to land that on the ground because it is sloping very steeply away from the home. Our intent was to build a ramp on the side of the home so that it will slope down and meet the slope of the yard as it's coming. I mean, I don't know if I'm doing hand motions here. I don't know if that means.
We've got some.
You got the drawing, so
Yeah.
so you can see the slope of it.
Is that, yeah.
So essentially, I didn't feel like I could, I wanted to build a ramp because of better access for my dog and my wife's back. And we didn't feel like we could realistically do that without putting it in beside the house. And the house is 45 feet wide and the lot is 75, so there is no extra width on the sides because the house takes up the entire width. I've spoken to my neighbor on the side where we're proposing a new ramp, and he did not indicate that he had any problems with it. We do have one on the other side of the house that we built when we moved in, because I did not realize that it was going to be in violation. So I guess I need approval for the existing ramp and the proposed one. If the board doesn't want to approve both of them, then we can, I would be amenable to just having one.
Okay. Chris, is this not something that should go back before the planning commission since it's a PUD?
Well, as part of the zone district, since they're asking for a variance from that, that would come to you all because that was approved as part of the PUD, and they're asking for a variance of that. If it was the entire development, yes, it would go back through the planning commission if they were asking for this variance on the entire development. But it's for one lot, so they're just asking for a setback variance. If the developer was coming in and wanting to amend the entire plan, yes, it would go back to the planning commission. For your a point of information, a typical R2 lot, if it wasn't in a PUD, has 10-foot side yard setback requirements. This developer at the time of rezoning placed 15 upon this entire development.
Can you elaborate on that one more time?
A typical R2 lot in the county, not in a PUD, has 10-foot side yard setback requirements for the primary structure. At the time of rezoning, the developer decided to put 15-foot side yard setback requirements upon the entire development as a part
He
of,
went beyond the county's.
and got it approved as a matter of zoning.
Well, it's a selling point, it's not as dense. Okay, does the board have questions for the applicant?
Let me ask one more question. Okay, just so I understand. His request for the variance in the footage doesn't seem to be unreasonable. But what ramifications, because it's PUD, which I don't have a lot of experience with that, is that like some no-break law, or we could grant it if we so desired, the variance? Are we in violation of something, or?
There could be possible ramifications. I would have to look into their HOA restriction on that. He will have to get this approved through, I guess his neighbors could come back and have a suit against the county if that were the case, that we've approved something that wasn't allowed in their bylaws, but we do not as a county enforce those.
I have an HOA request in right now, and they're waiting on the results of today's hearing before they approve or deny.
Well, I mean, what's changed? I mean, you just bought the house a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, nothing's changed. We just wanted a nice big deck because we have a, forested backyard with Suggs Creek at the bottom of the hill, and we just wanted to have more property and, or more deck and put a hot tub on it, and then we just needed a ramp to access the yard from up there, just mostly for the dog, because that's where our fence is.
Would there be any harm if it was deferred for a month and let your HOA?
Well,
As far as
the HOA said they were waiting to hear about the results of my variance. I mean, the only harm would just be that it would take longer to be built, so no, not really,
It's not going to clear anything up for us to wait a month, in my opinion, unless there's any new information that could come forward. Mr. Chairman?
I agree. I don't see with the HOA decision how that would impact what we're doing. I do have really great reservations about a brand-new PUD that's just been approved, and a home that's just been built not too long ago, and it was completed when you bought it, right?
What was completed when I bought it?
The house.
The house was, yeah.
I mean, there was nothing pulled on you. It wasn't a surprise or anything. You knew what you were buying.
Yeah. I mean, our intent was basically this all along. I just didn't realize I was going to have setback issues. Yeah.
Did you build the deck, or was it there when you got the house?
Well, there is an existing deck. We are planning to build onto it, make it larger, and this issue is what I encountered when I was going through the process. I went for my zoning compliance.
Enlarge the
They
existing.
pointed this out to me, so.
Any other questions for the applicant? And does anyone else here wish to speak to 4232 Peck?
The developer does still own the property on the south side, and so they've been notified through the HOA and probably through the board, the staff, so.
Would it be fair to assume, I haven't had my feet on the ground, that these other houses probably have steep backyards?
Yes.
If they were to build decks, this whole row of houses would possibly be up here wanting the exact same thing in the near future? Possibly?
Potentially, yes.
Any other questions? I'll close public comment on 4232 and turn to the board.
Mr. Chairman, I will move that we deny this case based on staff recommendations and the testimony given this morning.
Okay, I have a motion to deny 4232 based on staff recommendations. Do I have a second? And I will second. Any discussion on the motion? If no discussion, all in favor of the motion, vote aye. Aye. Opposition, vote no.
No.
And one opposed. We have 4 aye and 1 nay, and the motion carries.
Was Crockett the no?
Yes. Okay. Thank you for coming, sir. Our next case is case 4233, 6505 HR LLC, requesting use property for short-term rental. The property is located at 6505 Hickory Ridge Road, Lot 1A, William Sherrill Estate, parcel 69.02 on Wilson County Tax Map 70. Consists of 25.48 acres, zoned R1 residential. We'll get staff comments now on 4233.
Mr. Chair, the applicant is requesting to use the property as a short-term rental. Staff members have received a business plan stating how the applicant considers using the property. If the use is granted, staff recommends that this business plan be made part of the approval and put the applicant on notice if they are to add any sort of structure or expansion to use on the property. They will have to come back before the board for a plot plan submittal and revised business plan approval. The home is listed as a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a limit of 8 guests. Typically, the board will allow 2 guests per bedroom, limiting the number of guests allowed to 6. This business plan does not state who the caretaker is or where. I'm sorry, that sentence needs to be out. I'll address the caretaker here in a second. Airbnb short-term rentals are use permissible on appeal in the R1 zone district with a minimum acreage requirement of 2 acres. If the board approves the request, the applicant will have to make their contact information available to WEMA, the building inspector, and the county sheriff's office. The applicant will also need to prove that they or the caretaker live within 10 miles of the property before the house can function as a short-term rental. Speaking with the applicant on site, the applicant wants to have a caretaker who has experience with horses due to the facilities offered on site. The caretaker listed is 12 miles from the site, which would require the board to grant a 2-mile variance of the maximum distance requirement for the caretaker. Given the language in the zoning ordinance, staff can recommend approval of the short-term rental use for the home as the property does meet the 2-acre minimum threshold, and if a variance for the distance to the caretaker is given. If no variance is granted, staff will not be able to recommend approval of the request. I did speak with the applicant, and I did encourage him to be here. He is here to express that concern for the caretaker on why he wants that particular caretaker.
Okay, who's here to represent 4233 HR LLC?
Morning, my name is Greg Smith. I'm the property owner.
And what would you like to tell the board, sir?
Just in reference to the caretaker, this is kind of a unique property. I don't know if y'all know, it's right across Hickory Ridge from the new Publix. It's 25 acres. It's got a really nice farmhouse, but it has about a 10,000 square foot barn that's got 23 stalls. my intention is to market this to equestrian, like traveling equestrians, people that are coming for horse shows or whatever. That doesn't mean that we're not going to market to other types of people, but our focus is going to be to offer a temporary lodging for people that need something like this. It's got a really nice barn on it. Kendra Bradley is the caretaker that I've listed. She actually used to rent that house from me. She and her husband lived there for a year or so. They have since bought a home. But she's a very knowledgeable equestrian horse lady is what I call her. But I feel like it's important to have somebody with knowledge of equestrian and the demands of the equestrian type traveler, and she's agreed to do it. She's very knowledgeable.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for the applicant? Could you not find an additional person that would be within the 10-mile limit? I mean, nothing says you can only have one, right?
No, we don't have a limit on caretakers, no, sir.
Yeah, I'm sure that I could. I just don't want to. I just didn't want to throw somebody's name in there just to have a name. I would rather. I'd rather have the right person there. I didn't think an extra 2
might not
miles
hurt
of
to have a
driving.
backup plan, because if your lady who's your horse person happens to be out and about way off, and a horse gets loose or something or another, I mean, you've got some situations here that, to my knowledge, nobody else has probably ever had with an Airbnb.
Yeah.
Not saying there's anything wrong about it. I'm a horse person myself. I'm just saying you've got some situations here that may need to be considered a little bit. But anyway.
Well, and again, I don't want to get into the legalities of it, but there will be an agreement that whoever the tenant is that's staying, they're responsible for their animals. So it's not like I wouldn't expect they're going to throw an animal out in the pasture and then forget about it. So
Right, but my concern is not your tenant, but the traffic on Highway 109 and a horse gets loose at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
yeah, I understand. I guess that could be a problem anywhere.
Well, it could be, exactly. That is a concern anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Well, we've approved a number of short-term rentals. We deal with them quite a bit, and I've never known us to vary from the 10-mile requirement, because I think that's something that was pretty important to the county commission, that they set this up, that there be some responsible person that they could call on that was readily available to respond to a nuisance complaint. And I really am hesitant to say that, 12 is only 2 miles further than 10, because then I know what I'm going to hear next month. 14's not that much further than 12.
Yeah, I understand. I guess I felt like this was kind of a unique situation, like you say. It may be an extra 2 minutes for somebody to get there.
It's unique, and I have a tendency to lean the other way. I feel like you need a caretaker within a mile of this place. I feel like you're going the opposite way. That's just my opinion. You need somebody that can be there pretty quick.
Right.
If something happens, and you've already said that, but I feel like you need somebody close.
Right. Well, all I have is the
Common
regulation
sense.
that's out there, and I'm trying to comply the best I can. If I needed to get
Are you from
a
out of
second
town?
person. I live in Franklin.
In Franklin. Yeah, in that case, I think you would really need a responsible person very, very close to this type of proposal. Because as Mr. Deal said, if something goes wrong here, it's going to go wrong quick and bad,
Okay.
especially in that location.
Okay.
I mean, animals do strange things. I mean, that's just nature of them.
Sure. People do too.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from the board for this applicant? Let me ask, does anyone else here wish to address 4233?
Let's see.
Okay. If not, I'll close the public hearing in regard to 4233. And do you not think you would be able to get anybody that was any closer to help you with your proposal?
If that's what you all need, I mean, I'm sure I can find somebody. I just don't want to go find somebody just so I can have a name on a list. I would want to make sure that it was the right person. So,
Mr. Robinson, I don't know if you want to do.
Can we defer this?
We can defer it till he requests to get back on the agenda,
Okay.
which will let him come back next month or the month after, or whenever.
Yes.
I would feel a lot more comfortable if you had somebody a whole lot closer.
And I would too. And
I would really.
So we can either, and this is your option, we can either act, and I don't know how we'll vote, we can move forward, or if you want to request deferral until you can find someone else, we'll be happy to put you back on the agenda, at your request.
I guess a deferral, so I can go, yeah, I guess so, deferral.
All right. At the request of the applicant, I move that we defer 4233 until he requests to be back on the agenda. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, vote aye. Aye. Opposition, no. The ayes have it. Just let the staff know when you want to come back.
Thank you.
Our next case is case 4234, Southern Marinas LLC, requesting a renewal of a short-term rental. The board approved the short-term rental July 15, 2021, for a period of 1 year. The property located at 9,000 Saundersville Road, parcel 41, on Wilson County Tax Map 32. It consists of 2.16 acres and zoned R1 residential. We'll get staff recommendations now on 4234.
Mr. Chair, this is a request for a renewal of approval of a short-term rental. As said, it was granted for 1 year on July 15, 2021, with the following conditions. The maximum number of occupants is 8. The business plan was part of the approval. Any changes to the plan will be required to come back before the board, and the applicant must supply emergency contact information to the staff. The business plan staff received from the applicant states the maximum number of guests is 10. Two more than the original approval allowed. The remaining conditions listed above are upheld. The use and amenities of the property have not changed, nor have there been any public complaints about the property. Staff can recommend approval of the request if they are willing to amend their business plan back to the original 8, unless additional information they have to submit to you. There's no language in the zoning ordinance granting staff permission to renew short-term rentals. However, the board may consider this request. Staff will point out that in renewal cases such as this, if a request is approved, the board typically grants an extended renewal period. This one has been expired for 2.5 years, so the board may want to consider that in their next approval of this, if so.
Okay, who's here to represent 4234 Southern Marinas?
Good morning.
Yes, ma'am.
My name's Tanya Bristow. I'm the operations manager for the marina that the parcel sits on.
And your address?
9,000 Saundersville Road.
And what would you like to tell the board?
So the property had changed hands in this, so we didn't know that we thought that the license was for 3 years, so I think that we didn't understand that it was 1 year, because it typically seems that it was 3.
Well, you're still expired.
Yeah, I know. So we got the notice and then immediately refiled. So I had a manager that quit, so I don't know if she had gotten it and just never had, kind of gotten it up the food chain. So I do apologize for that. The original notice that I had was for 10 people, but we're happy to amend it to 8 if that's what the law requires.
Okay. Any questions from the board for the applicant?
There's kind of some, I don't know, I guess about this sewer system, whatever, we have a report where I guess it was inspected in 2017. It says it's all good. But it also says there's no record of the system found. Shows approximate location of what appears to be part of a septic system or something. Have you had any problems?
No. It's the marina kind of sits in front of that parking lot, so we've obviously done it for the marina as well.
Obviously, we approved it with that. I
Yes, sir.
kind of found that interesting, I guess.
Any other questions for the board, from the board? Anyone else here wish to address 4234? Commissioner?
Oh. Hi. Hi. Lauren Breeze, County Commissioner for District 18.
Ma'am, if you'd step away just a tad, please.
Okay. Yeah, Lauren Breeze, Commissioner, District 18, 1014 Bellwood Drive. I haven't had any complaints about this particular property. I do have a couple of questions. I'm looking at their Airbnb listing right now, and it says 15 guests. That's what's live right now on the website.
Anything on Airbnb, though.
You do.
Well, we can't, we don't have anything to do with what they put somewhere.
Right, I understand. I'm just saying.
We're probably going to stipulate them if we
Right.
approve it back to 6 or 8.
Okay. Well, like I said, I've had issues with septic tanks before, so, and I don't know, and I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this or not, but I don't know if this is on septic or if this is on sewer, so.
It has a septic for the house.
It does, okay. So there was one question, and then again, I'm just looking at the listing, it says 15, so I've spoken to our fire marshal for the county, and anything over 10 falls under the state fire marshal. He would be here this morning, but he's at a class, so he wanted me to impart the information that it would fall underneath state fire marshal, and I think it has to be sprinkled at that point, anything 10 or over, so.
We
that's all.
actually use this Evolve as, but it's not actually Airbnb, so I will talk to them. This is just our hosting.
Gotcha.
See where that is.
Okay.
So I'll talk to them, and just whatever you all decide, we'll make sure that it's correct.
That's perfect, yeah. I just want to make sure we don't have septic issues.
Yeah.
Trust me,
I've
you
never had any
don't want
problems. That's why I was
septic
like, why
issues.
is he here?
That's all, that was my only question, so, yeah.
Well,
So-
if we do anything, we'll stipulate it back to 8.
I think that sounds perfect. That follows septic, and
No problem.
life is good. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? If not, we'll close public comment on 4234 and turn to the board. The board have any other questions or discussion? If not, we'll hear a motion in regard to 4234.
I'll make a motion, this is approved upon staff recommendation.
I will second and offer amendments.
Okay.
I would like to state again that this is an approval for 8 occupants only, not 10, not 15, it's 8. And secondly, since this has been expired for so long, I'm going to amend our approval back to 1 year instead of our customary 3 on second, because this thing's been expired for 3 years. So you should be here next Christmas.
Can't wait.
Okay.
I'll bring cookies.
And thirdly, I would like to stipulate that all of our requirements from the original approval be made part of the made part of this approval. Do you accept?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve based on 1 year, 8 occupants, and everything that was stipulated in the original approval is still in force and part of this motion. And we have a second. Any discussion on the approval or on the motion to approve? If not, all in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposition vote no. And the ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
And I just want to note to the applicant that you will be responsible to reapply next year. You're not going to receive notices going forward. That was a courtesy this time around, and that will not be offered going forward.
Okay, case 4235 has been deferred. And so our next case will be 4236. Justin Latimer, on behalf of Bryant Frick, is requesting a variance of 18 feet from the front setback requirement of 30 feet and a variance of 10 feet from the rear yard setback requirement of 40 feet. The property will also need a variance of 40 feet from the lot width requirement of 125 feet and a variance of 70,520 square feet from the lot size requirement of 80,000 square feet. The variances will allow the applicant to replace the existing house. The proposed house will be 12 feet from the front property line, 30 feet from the rear property line. The property is located at 812 Burton Point Road, parcel 55 on Wilson County Tax Map 27, consists of approximately 9,480 square feet and is zoned A1 agricultural. We'll get staff recommendations now on 4236.
Mr. Chair, doing staff's due diligence, we were unable to determine the age of the lot, but the tax records indicate that the home was built in 1973, so depending upon when in 73, it could possibly predate our zoning ordinance. In discussions with the applicant, staff was informed that the existing septic lines must be utilized for the new home. This prohibits the new home from being built deeper into the lot, as the basement must remain 25 feet from existing fill lines, and that is a TDEC requirement I've been made aware of. It's not anything in our zoning ordinance. Staff will note that while setback variances are often granted for older lots of records, large variances on front yard setbacks are typically avoided, and there's no precedent for them in this neighborhood. Therefore, staff cannot recommend approval. This lot, regardless of an approval, will have to undergo minimum FEMA requirements for any construction due to having floodplain on the property.
Okay, who's here to represent 4236? Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Scott Blitch. Address is 4878 East Division. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Latimer. He couldn't be here today. In line with what the staff recommended or said, we do know that there are field lines on either side of the property, as well as septic tank on either side of the house. We attempted to locate those both through TDEC as well as through sounding rod, and have been unable to. So we need to be able to stay, as he said, about 25 feet off of where we expect them to go, where we expect them to be, which would not allow us to come back deeper on the property. In consideration with the other houses in the neighborhood, it's not an unreasonable size house that we're asking to build. It is just a small lot. Other than that, I don't really have anything to add from what he said.
So you don't know when the lot was established?
We have not been able to find that out exactly.
Chris, would it not be reasonable to think if a house was built in 73, the lot had to predate the ordinance?
I would assume so, but I can't make those assumptions without a plat on record.
So you just don't know?
Correct.
Okay.
The only record I can assure you of is that the house does have, it is on the tax roll as being completed in 1973, so.
And the ordinance came about in 72 or 73?
June of 73, I think it was when it was formally adopted.
Okay.
I can give you an exact.
The records, I think, show that the process started in 72, didn't get final approval until sometime in 74.
Yeah, 74 is what I thought.
Was it approved all at one time? I had heard it was a rolling approval over several months.
I didn't check that. I was in high school then, so didn't really care. But in looking at it, I did see the final date. I think July of 74.
July 74 is when the ordinance was dated.
But it could have been that would make, I don't know if it makes sense, but I could believe that.
Okay. All right.
It does state in the zoning ordinance that a lot does have to be of record July 10th of 1974.
Gotcha. Okay.
Would, you're replacing an existing house, correct?
Yes, sir.
Are you, I would assume, are you further encroaching on the front yard, front setback? Are you staying in the same footprint, or?
We will be further encroaching. Our we have about an 1,880 square foot footprint for the basement, and then of course going up on the rest of the house. So we are asking to further encroach on the front setback. We are actually coming within the side setbacks based on the current house versus what we are proposing. But in order to have this house that the customer wants on this size lot, we are asking to encroach further on the forward.
So you're going to remove the house that's there?
Yes, sir.
And relocate?
Yes, sir.
And how large is the house that's there?
Overall, house size is about 4,300 square feet with a footprint of about 1,880.
So what's theirs, 4,300?
No, I'm sorry, your current, sorry, I don't have the current square footage available right this moment.
How much further would you say you're encroaching on the front setback with the new house as opposed to the old house?
We are moving forward roughly, I believe roughly 12 feet. So we don't have our lines on our original. And actually, I think it's closer to 10 feet, based on just kind of looking on what we have.
It shows on the tax records that the existing house that's there is, the first floor is 1688, the basement 1688. It's got a garage that's 672, and then the porch's square footage. It's got a screen porch that's finished, that's 308, so around 3,600 square feet. Well, if you include the garage, it's close to 4,000.
So on our sheet that's been submitted, the first page, I guess this yellowish line is the minimum building setback line, 30 foot in the back, 40 foot in the front?
Yes, sir. 30 foot in the front, 40 foot in the back.
The yellow checkered line?
Yeah. And one of the shaded areas, the larger of the two, is the existing structure, correct?
Your existing structure should be on an A1.1. That A0 that you have is the new structure, and I have a...
Well, I got two blocks here, so one of them's got to be something other than the house. See, I've got a block that's shaded like...
That's the new house. Oh, sorry, guys.
And what's the smaller block up towards the bottom of the page? This one?
That is a covered patio.
Okay. So this represents the new structure?
Yes, sir.
I got you. And...
I do have a copy of the old structure if you'd like to see it.
That's okay. The board have any other questions?
Maybe, I think this right here shows it, but maybe for either you or staff, the setback is pretty much straight even though it's on a cul-de-sac. Would that be correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Anyone else here that wish to speak to this case, 4236 on Burton Point? Okay. If not, I'll close the public comment period. All right, turn to the board. Do I hear a motion?
I got a question first. Looking at the illustration and also, is the existing house, looks like it's already encroached on the property line.
It is encroached on the minimum setback lines. Both.
What's the blue line?
That's not actually accurate.
Yeah, they're not
It's just a
accurate.
rough estimate of that.
Oh,
Don't ever, just,
The existing house is over.
yeah, that's just a guesstimate.
Yeah, the existing house is over the current front setback lines. In the past, if they were adding an addition to the home, we would most likely, just due to the age of the lot, recommend approval of the variances due to the existing location. In this case, it's a complete tear down, so this is their chance to kind of remedy that situation, and typically the board has tried to stray away from front yard setbacks. The rear yard setbacks in these instances have been granted up to 39 feet due to the proximity to them abutting core property. But
I have a little concern about it being in floodplain.
We don't consider that, do we? And that FEMA
Well,
takes care of
he's got it
that.
stated
Right,
on
but
here.
he has,
Well, I'm just making the applicant
outside
aware.
of this board.
But yeah, the board's not voting on that. I'm just making the applicant aware. There will be other hurdles for this applicant to overcome through FEMA's minimum requirements.
Because I have folks that live out there and it does flood when the lake gets up and rains.
So are you telling us you cannot build this house, you can't move forward without a front yard setback variance?
In its current iteration, yes, sir.
That-
In its current design,
Yeah,
yes, sir.
in its current design.
Because the customer would have to have the house completely redesigned in order to do that, and this is what they're asking to build.
Okay. All right. Again, turning to the board for for a motion.
Let me, Chris, ask one more. I think when you read this, it comes down to the front variance, basically.
Correct, yeah, that's the only one I have an issue
That
with.
seems to be what's all important, is going from 30 feet to 18 feet. So, and we haven't done that before, according to your statement here.
Well, there's no precedent in this neighborhood for that. I'm not going to say you've not done it before, because I'm sure there's probably one out there if I do my research.
But your recommendation would be we shouldn't start that or start going there?
Well, I mean, if once you grant it in this neighborhood, if anybody else comes forward, that precedent has been set for this neighborhood. And there's, I don't know, 50 homes in this neighborhood approximately.
Should this home get, and I think I know the answer, but should this home get any consideration for hardship because it's on a cul-de-sac?
No, not for a cul-de-sac. No,
Okay,
sir.
I'm just saying,
Road frontage is the same whether, whatever.
Exactly, I kind of knew that.
Let me ask you this, Chris.
Yep.
If there was a documentation, there was a document that stated when the lot was created, and it's not got a deed to it?
It does.
It doesn't state when it was?
I've not done that in-depth of title search.
But to me, a lot of this size was probably
Well, yeah, it's substandard by any means now.
created somewhere not too awful long after the impoundment, because does it back up to the core?
It does, yes, sir.
But if you had a deed or a document that said the lot was created on a certain date, and that date predated the zoning ordinance, what would your recommendation be?
It would be the same as it currently is. I mean, I would state that it is an older lot of record, but still, even on older lots of records, we've typically tried to stray from granting front yard setbacks. Most of those older lot of records, they're excessive side and rears, but we don't have a lot of front yard setbacks that come before you. I would not change my recommendation regardless of whether or not there was a plat in this instance.
Even on a recorded older lot of record, they still can't overbuild. I mean, we do grant variances, but there's a limit to.
And, I mean, if there was an older lot of, if there was a recorded plat that was older, a lot of these ones that are this age, they have like a blanket. There's no setbacks on them. In most cases, the ones they're more excessive than what we would typically require. So if that were the case, we'd most likely require them to amend that plat to have a less variance.
Well, the size of this lot does bother me, because a lot of times we're dealing with these lots out on the lake. They're small, but a lot of them aren't this small. They would be a little larger.
Yes, sir.
And there was an existing house that did encroach on the front setback already to some degree, not this much.
The only way that my recommendation would change, if you're going to go back to that, is if they were trying to renovate this house in some form or fashion and they weren't doing a complete tear down. This kind of comes into the 10-440 case where they did a complete tear down of the structure, and that got us into they have to meet the current standard.
And the old house is gone?
No, it's still standing presently.
Still there?
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh. And I don't know, you may have already answered this, but do you know how much it encroaches on the front yard setback?
8 feet. According to my math. That was just my math.
Was this dotted line, is that the structure that's on there now? Right here in this square? Is this the current structure, this dotted line?
Proposed.
That is the proposed structure.
Let me, we're just going to leave that one down there.
Couldn't be right.
8 foot. Where I'm at, I don't know how accurate it is.
Okay. All right. Again, we've had our public hearing and we've had our discussion in regard to 4236 Latimer for Brian Frickle. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I will move that we deny this case based on staff recommendations.
I have a motion to deny 4236 based on staff recommendations. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and second. Discussion? If there's no discussion, all in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposition vote no. And the ayes have it. Thank you, sir. If you want to give it to the staff, we'll put it in the record. Okay, case 4237. Anthony Mitchell on behalf of Thomas Wright requesting a division of property in order to create 4 legal building lots without public road frontage. The property is located at 2988 Saundersville Ferry Road, parcel 17.01 on Wilson County Tax Map 11. It consists of 6 acres and is on R1 residential. We'll get staff recommendations now on 4237.
Mr. Chair, the applicant is requesting a division of property to create 4 legal building lots without public road frontage. The zoning ordinance states that all lots must have a 50-foot of public road frontage. The current lot is a 6-acre landlocked tract, and given that the current lot predates the zoning ordinance, the tract would be allowed 1 residential building permit presently. Given the language in the zoning ordinance, staff cannot recommend approval to subdivide the property into 4 legal building lots.
Okay. And who's here to represent 4237 Mitchell on behalf of Wright?
I'm Anthony Mitchell,
Yes, sir. Address?
305 Anchor Lane, Old Hickory.
And what would you like to tell the board, sir?
I'm assisting to settle the estate for Larry Wright on behalf of the heirs. The affiant for the affidavit of heirship for the property, and I just had 5 points that I believe are a hardship for trying to help them get the estate settled, and here's the 5 points. The first is, it's a hardship because in the absence of a variance, no reasonable use or equal re-subdivision can be accomplished due to lack of access to public road. The hardship is being created due to the loss of Larry. Secondly, due to the unique physical limitations of this property and its lack of access to a public road, I can't help them divide it, so should this property had frontage, we wouldn't be here. And what we were requesting could easily be done. We could subdivide under the current regulations of the county. Third, other existing properties, I mean, like right across the street, do not meet the current regulations with only the road frontage, but also with size, though they are older lots of record, like this one. Fourth, our request does exceed the current regulations with regard to size, though we can't get access to a public road. There's just no way to do that. And fifth, there'll be no harm or undue stress to other residents of the private access road with the addition of 3 single-family homes or single-family residential lots. So.
Okay. Does the board have questions for the applicant?
Comment or question. Sure, Mr. Wright, I guess, was the owner of this lot that's deceased. I mean, that's what the property was when he bought it. The circumstances were the same. And I don't know that we've approved lots like this because the road frontage is 50 feet. And I can envision what would happen if we started approving less than 50-foot right-of-ways. The real estate agents in this county would go crazy wanting to build. So I just have a hard time with your request because, the gentleman bought the property just like it was, and I can't see changing that. Just my comment. Maybe more discussion prove me wrong or change my mind, but I don't think that's going to help the situation.
Other questions from the board?
I can reply to that. He didn't have a last will and testament in place, and his son, they had verbal communications, but he left nothing in writing. He didn't take care of his business.
That's not an issue for this board at all.
I know, I was just letting you know.
What I'm trying,
I agree with that. I just
they will
wanted
be
you to know.
lined out this building if we start approving things like this. They'll be out the door every meeting.
Okay, any other questions from the board for the applicant? If not, does anyone else wish to address 4237, Anthony Mitchell on behalf of Brian Wright? Yes, sir, come forward, please.
How y'all doing?
Good.
My name is Chad Cheatham. I live at 2980 Saundersville Ferry Road. I'm one of the residents. These are several of my neighbors behind me. We received a letter concerning what they wanted to do. It was a pastor ahead of us, and we knew Larry, and Larry was a great guy. We have some major concerns about what the plans were or are. Our road is from my house. I sit directly across the street from the pasture. It is 3/4 of a mile to Saundersville Ferry Road on our private driveway that 12 homes use, and we are financially and physically responsible for that private drive. We got the letter the 10th of December, or actually it's dated the 9th. I didn't get to the 10th or 11th. And it was only given to the residents fairly in front of the actual property, while there's 12 other homes that use that driveway back and forth. The expense of building the road, it was originally built as a private driveway in 1980 as a gravel road. The residents paid for the paving of it in 1995. Water was brought down. We were all on well, and then water was brought down from the main road at Saundersville Ferry Road down to our residences in 2017. I moved in 2016. Some of the concerns were obviously what's going to be built there, how many. One of the major concerns is the overuse of the private driveway that we're all responsible for. We want to know if there's any plans for that. Construction traffic, matter of fact, even where we're back there, we can't get garbage or garbage trucks or anything moving in because it's a single, there's no turnarounds. So Mr. Sutherland has agreed to allow, when there is a delivery truck, to turn around at his personal driveway, because we have driveways that lead up to the actual driveway. And those are some of the major concerns in a short notice, and we are not exactly thrilled with it, and that's why we're all here. We have several lists of concerns on here that I mentioned as we spoke. And finally, one of the things that you mentioned is, as you can see driving up to it, there's sharp curves. Part of the right side of the road is the property owned by the Corps. So there's no way to widen that road. And also there's many fields back there, and that would set a precedent as we're sitting here talking about other, what would happen further on down the road on the existing properties, like what Mr. Crockett just said. That's all I have.
Anyone else here wish to address the board?
Case number 3.
Being busy.
I know. Yeah, got stacked with its agenda. Lauren Breeze, Commissioner for District 18, 1014 Bellwood Drive. I'm intimately familiar with this area. In December of 2021, there was a tornado that went across the peninsula right here and exited pretty much in this area. So I have driven this private drive with our fire chief from WEMA, and I wish that Daniel Callen was here today because he could speak to this as opposed to listening to me. But everything that the gentleman just said is correct. It's basically a one-lane road, and one of the things that was said—
It's not a public road.
It's not, no. And I've driven it because, again, we were looking at damage possibly because of the tornado. So one of the things that was said to me, though, by our fire chief, who was with me, was about fire access. So that would be one of my big concerns. If you add additional lots in this area, is that it's a one-line private drive. So,
Commissioner, let me interrupt you.
Yes, sir.
And I don't mean to, and it just happened to be the person up there.
That's okay.
We're going way down a rabbit hole here.
Okay.
This is such an outrageous proposal that I don't know that anything's in front of this board except for, are we going to allow more than one building permit on a lot that doesn't have any frontage?
All right, well, then I don't need to say
that's sorta
anything
it.
further. I just wanted to bring to light the
and I don't-
situation about fire access.
And if you
So
want to continue having...
I don't have to continue. I just wanted to
I don't
bring
wanna
this
cut anybody
one
off, but
question.
The only thing in front of this board is, he is entitled, I think, by, history or case law or some precedent, to a building permit for one lot because he doesn't have any access anywhere else.
I understand that.
He's not entitled to anything else.
Understood.
And I don't know, this is such a out of the way, down the road sort of thing.
Right.
I just can't imagine that we would grant anything other than what he's entitled to, knowing there are so many other property owners involved who would probably not agree with it. And I don't know that we have that authority.
Well, thank you.
That was just some
All right.
thoughts.
I can stop talking. By all means, I apologize. So,
Well,
all right.
I don't want people to have to spend so much time, and I'm probably out of place a little bit here, but I don't want us to spend so much time on something that is really pretty over the top.
Understood.
And we got 5 people up here, and there may be 4 votes that are in favor of it. I cannot say.
I
But,
don't know either. I just wanted to add the concern.
I think the duty of the board, what we're to consider
Yes, sir.
is clear. So, continue.
That's all. I don't have anything else to say.
Also, remember, we asked for public comment, so
Yes, we do.
that's what we're having here.
I didn't know if you were familiar with
This
this
is a week of-
particular area, so I just
a week
wanted
of
to let
public
you know about, there has been a concern brought up by our fire chief for WEMA in the past to me personally about fire access. That's all I wanted to add to the conversation.
I will
So,
commend Commissioner Breeze for taking an interest in coming forward to represent our people. Not to start anything with that, she's taking the time to come up there.
He's still in Monday night.
Well,
thank you, Mr. Neal.
For the record, I made my comment.
All right.
Coming up here and speaking up for her people.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Now we can move on.
All right.
Anyone else?
I'm done.
Anyone else?
I'd like to respectfully request to defer it. I did not know until now there was any kind of opposition, and there's another issue with the property that if I can't do this for the heirs, then I'll just
as long as
do
you're
something
aware.
else.
I think, Christopher might help me, I think, you have a landlocked tract and you're probably entitled to one building permit.
There were 2 parcels, but that's why I want to defer for several reasons. I think it's best.
Also, I understand you want to defer. You'll have to be back here anyway at some point. Deferring's fine, but you'll have to have the approval of this board for that 1 or 2 every what you get, you'll have to get the approval here before you can pull a permit.
Correct. And I'd like to talk to these guys and the heirs, and either's fine,
Deferral is fine, and we can defer to
I just want to get it
your request.
done either way, so it's off my desk.
So if you'd like, we'll entertain a motion, or the board can
You're
entertain a
requesting
motion.
a deferral until you
request to get
to be
back on.
on the agenda?
Yes, sir.
I make a motion that we allow the applicant to defer until he requests to be back on our agenda.
Have a motion to defer till he requests. Have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Let me ask a question. Second.
Ms. Robinson.
You make a second.
It doesn't matter.
All right.
Crockett, second. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. If there's no discussion, all in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposition, no. The ayes have it. Christopher, do you have anything else?
Who did we decide made that second?
Ms. Robinson.
Okay. And
Wait.
Crockett second the last one. Crockett.
okay. The only additional information I have is regarding the Airbnb. That acreage threshold for 2 acres was passed by the Planning Commission, or the County Commission, on December 16th at 11:30 p.m.
Wonder why they were there so late.
Okay, are we done? Yes, sir. Hold on. Yes, sir. You got a question?
Yeah, Chris,
Yep.
by the way, congratulations.
Thank you.
Appointment there.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
I read they explain what the county commission voted for.
The County Commission, it was the zoning.
What's the difference between what we have today and what they decided?
Well, the zoning resolution, it did not do anything to the R1 district. It added the 2-acre threshold into A1 and R2 to make it uniform across the county.
Okay.
We approved for 8.
Christopher has cut his teeth this week for.
He sure has.
Yeah,
And you did a great job, Christopher.
He has, and he swam out.
Yes,
He did an excellent job.
Okay. If we're done, we're adjourned.